dark room.
Yeah.
Didn't even end program.
He's like Moriarty. Looks like we are live on Facebook, and I believe YouTube is loading as well. And we are live. So, hey, everybody, and welcome. Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 1, Episode 6, Terminal Provocations has ended here on September 10th of 2020. But we're just getting started here on Live Long and Podcast. I'm Dave Mader, joined with Jeff Mader, my brother, and Jaemeel Robinson, co-host, to cover this episode as it has just aired today. It's just dropping, and we're still, we've just crossed into the second half of Season 1 for this new Star Trek show. And I think there's a lot to unpack in this episode. I'm still kind of amazed how much story they seem to be fitting in somehow into these 22 minutes. So a lot to go over, but what is sort of like maybe the headline at this hour? Jaemeel, I know you're distraught there. I can see.
Badgie.
It's Badgie. Yeah, I think he's the headline. Was he the star of this episode, Jeff?
Well, there was kind of like two A storylines going on, I would say. Like you guess you could say the B storyline was the Tendi and Rutherford stuff, but it seemed to take up more time than the other stuff. I don't know, it was better. Maybe it was just better, and that's maybe not more time, but I enjoyed it more than the other stuff. Even though I did like the other stuff too.
Really? I thought there were two F storylines in this episode.
Oh, really? You didn't like the episode?
I did not like this episode at all.
Interesting. But Dave, what did you think?
Yeah, well, I think I was up and down. I think I was a little bit mixed on this one. There were things I liked, and there were things that weren't quite landing too much for me. I'd say that maybe a little bit down the downer side, but I'm not like fully negative on it per se. Like, I think that the cold open was really weak. This whole bit with the hums and the different sounds that the different things make, like conceptually, it's sort of funny, but like it really didn't work for me in this execution. This guest star tonight, who was playing Fletcher, this character of Fletcher, and just everything about this, like there were some funny moments, but he wasn't necessarily funny to me. This particular character, and he's a big part of this episode, so not necessarily great, but I thought there were some things I loved. I thought that in particular Shax, I'm sorry, it's Lieutenant Shax. I call him Jax.
That's the A storyline.
Yeah, no, it's not the Sons of Anarchy guy. It's Lieutenant Shax, the security officer. He was amazingly funny in this episode. He shined really great. He was like, "Just let me attack them, come on!" And he's like a Bajoran Worf with a mustache. Is kind of what he kind of is, right? He's just very like he always wants to attack. That's his job.
He didn't want to disable weapons. He's like, "No, we gotta aim for the worm core."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted more Shax, and they gave me more Shax.
Yeah, so I think that's like maybe like the best thing in this episode. I think then the other big thing that I think was kind of funny was Badgie. This whole concept on the holodeck with Devanna and Rutherford, which it's clear that they are pushing these two into a romantic direction. To me, at this point, there was a couple of little signals in this episode, but they were kind of doing like a play on the holodeck trying to kill you trope, which was done in all through the TNG DS9 Voyager era quite a bit. And it was funny, but the thing I think that was taken away from me, like, I saw Sausage Party a couple of years ago, and I felt that this character Badgie was very reminiscent of Nick Kroll's douche in Sausage Party, like in a lot of ways, like just the sort of the malevolence, and even the way the character's animated in some ways. And so I was kind of like, okay, like this should be funnier to me, but I feel like it's kind of been, I've seen this in a pretty prolific movie. I think I've seen a couple times at least. So it's that was taken away from me personally. But
okay. Do you know who did the voice of Badgie?
No,
it was Jack McBrayer.
Who's that?
He's the guy from 30 Rock. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah,
the guy with the
page.
Yeah, like, well, I don't know. The guy from 30 Rock.
The guy who works
There's more than one guy from 30 Rock.
I don't watch 30 Rock.
The guy who wears the 30 Rock NBC jacket. I don't know.
Yeah,
Jack
Page.
McBrayer.
He's the Page?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it's Kenneth Parcell on 30 Rock.
Yeah.
Okay,
Kenny.
well,
It wasn't .com. Okay.
it wasn't great. I did notice that and then the storyline with the captain tonight, where they were fighting the freighter ship that was giving them a hard time with their old junk or whatever. That was J.G. Hertzler, Martok, was coming through in the voice of that character, and many other Star Trek characters he's played, but adding one to the list.
Who did he do tonight?
The captain of that other
The
ship, like the
freighter,
pirate
yeah.
ship that was trying to
okay.
like salvage that cargo. And and while we're on that, what was like the whole premise with the captain tonight? In that, and we were talking about Shax. I keep wanting to call him Jax, but it's Shax. Was funny, but it's all, she's funny just in terms of like, no, we have to be more like civilized, and we have to try to do better. And I'm being so considerate, but she's obviously irritated and just like trying to be better than her nature, which I really appreciate there. And she's like, no, we can't resort to violence, and Shax just wants to attack them.
Please, let me just
let me destroy them, right? And he's like, no. She's like, no. And then they start flinging the garbage at their ship, and he's like, come on.
They could use their tractor beam to kind of redirect it. Didn't they see yesterday's Enterprise?
Yeah, there was a couple times they've redirected things with tractor beams. I feel like that was the storyline I keep wanting to come back to. I feel like the stuff on this Badgie stuff comedically, conceptually funnier than it turned out to be. I think, I kind of like this idea of this hologram program turning on Rutherford, but it's a little bit like just even like the dialogue, like I want to eat, like wear your skin, and some of the jokes are just a little too like much.
It wasn't well written, planned out. Some of his dialogue, I agree. Like especially the diplomatic immunity line, it was kind of stupid.
With another performer, with another comedian, a comedic voice, I think maybe it works. I just don't think this particular version.
No, I don't think it was the performer. I think it was just like some of the dialogue and the way it was written. The performer, I thought Jack McBrayer. I didn't even know it was him, for one, and two, I thought he was really good at. Yes, he was very like the douche, but that didn't bother me. I was like, was it a good like performance for the most part? Yes, but the dialogue was rough in certain parts.
I also was kind of taken aback by the amount of violence that was there in that whole fight scene.
He was slitting the throats of the Bajorans and stuff.
Yeah, the entire. I was like, wait, what? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's CBS All Access, and they're really pushing this adult animation.
Yeah, I think that the joke is not in that particular sequence. Yeah, where it's so malevolent so quickly, and it's just but it's trying to be funny, and it's just but scary. But clearly, like Devanna and Rutherford aren't. It never feels that scary either. There's never like, and I think that's also the joke, but it's also kind of the problem. And I'm trying to reconcile this one. So I think we're kind of saying that this one didn't land. This is not necessarily the one we're saying was the best one of the season.
Are people saying it's the best one of the season?
No, I don't know. I don't know what the people are saying. We got to find out what Janju76 is saying. But
my dude.
Janju76 didn't put a review.
He couldn't even bring himself to post.
But I have one from Dig Nuts.
Dig Nuts. Not D's Nuts, but Dig.
Okay, give it to us.
He wrote like a book.
Ooh.
So Dig Nuts had a lot to say.
You're finding excerpts to reference.
Jaemeel, what did you think of the joke with Delta Shift?
I was kind of hoping for some Red Squad action. You know what? I didn't mind that. I kind of like the idea of like, there's different shifts and everyone's paired up. Mm-hmm. The whole Fletcher thing just kind of ruined it really quickly for me. Yeah,
he's part of Beta Shift, which is what our main leads of the show are part of. Apparently, they're part of the Beta. And so when they're sleeping, Delta Shift is working, vice versa. And so they have sort of this mirror universe quality and a rivalry, almost like Anchorman when all the rival news teams
the news teams, Channel 5 news team,
right? Spanish television news team and whatever. And so and just like I just thought that was kind of I think that has a lot of potential and something that they can maybe explore
if they
more.
reference it again. I feel like this episode had elements I found enjoyable, but I just putting together as one thing, it kind of failed in that regard. Like the Badgie thing was just I kind of get what they were doing, but I didn't particularly dig that. The Fletcher thing was hard to watch. I didn't find him compelling, nor did I care about his comeuppings occurring or lack of comeuppings occurring. I wasn't digging that part. Only the bridge stuff, like I really enjoyed, and I kind of wish that they dropped either of the storylines and gave more time for that. The hijinks on the bridge.
Yeah, but they tie it in with this Fletcher story that he's kind of like this big idiot. But they're kind of friends with him at the beginning, as he went to the academy with Boimler. Is that like that's the premise of his character? But he's sort of this fun guy that Mariner's sort of friends with at this point. Even by the end of the episode, they're sort of still friends with him, but not really. He's like this annoying friend they don't really like, but they kind of talk to. And I thought it was kind of funny when he was like, "No, I was phasered when you guys were at the rave or the party or whatever."
The choo
choo dads.
Yeah,
like a joke that was okay, but wasn't grabbing me. But anyway, it was kind of.
Was that a reference to Discovery?
I think it was a reference to Discovery. I think that whole that time loop episode with Harry Mudd.
Yeah,
and they were at the disco, literally on disco. Yeah, like his like, and the fact that he hooked up his brain to this computer core
to get smarter. Like, okay, Reginald, but
only
like,
he's thought of this, and all of the entire human race of all people on Starfleet, he's the only one who's thought to do this, and this is the only time.
It just seemed like huge jumps. Like, why would he do this? Like, did he see it somewhere? Was it like, no, he just did it? Why did he fake that he phased it and everything like that? It just seems huge, like leaps in logic for the story purposes, and was just supposed to go along with it. I was not following along in terms of that journey. I'm sorry.
But, like, Jeff, do you feel like they like a lot of these guest stars, especially the non main character lower decks guys, we've seen a few of them that are sort of like these, like the guy who ascended right into whatever, and also this Fletcher guy, that they're sort of like portrayed as like Starfleet bumbling idiots. And like I think what they're trying to say is like a lot of Starfleet, like as many as like there's these hero characters, there's a lot of like Starfleet officers who are just kind of dumb and really poor characters. And that was kind of the joke they were trying to, they even say it in Fletcher's dialogue tonight. Like he's like, no, we're Starfleet, we have a certain moral goodness to us no matter what. And I think that they're kind of challenging that and saying no, that there's just normal idiots in Starfleet too, and sometimes people fail upwards.
This is where we go back to the canon argument, where for me that's not true. Like that, first of all, you're not going to graduate the academy if you're a bumbling idiot that you think that you're going to throw a trash in a warp core.
They're not going to let you into the academy.
Exactly. So this is where, like, this whole canon argument completely doesn't hold water for me, because they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be able to say that Starfleet are a bunch of bumming idiots, but then at the same time go, no, it is in the same universe. No, it is not. This is a critique satire show. It's the Simpsons of Star Trek. It's the Family Guy of Star Trek. That's what they're doing in this show. That's fine. I take it for what it is. And so if that's what they want to make fun of and they want to have fun with it, that's fine. That's great. But the creator saying that it's canon is like ridiculous to me. Like it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too on that level. Because that's not what Starfleet is. Like Starfleet is like, you got to be super smart just to get to the academy. Mm-hmm. And once you're in the academy,
4 years of like intensive schooling and tests and
then you got to be really good to get into Red Squad.
Red Squad. Red Squad. Red Squad.
Red Squad. We're Red Squad.
I'll remember to put that on your tombstone.
So like, it's almost like in some ways I feel like this show, like I'm like, are they fans of Star Trek, or do they kind of secretly hate Star Trek and they're kind of like making fun of it?
To be fair, most Star Trek fans are like that, where they love Star Trek, but they also hate Star Trek as well. They hate,
something
like,
about
if
it.
you were Jeff, if you were in charge of a show, you would be putting digs at Discovery left, right, and center, right?
Sure.
I
They're
would be
not-
I would
they're
be
not
talking
taking-
about like Harry Kim 1, rest in peace. You know,
Right. But they're not digging Discovery or Picard or the new stuff. They're digging at TNG and like Voyager and those shows. So which makes me think Alex Kurtzman has his name on the show. His name appears in the titles. I'm like, damn, maybe the suspicion was right all along. Maybe Kurtzman really does hate the old Star Trek.
Well,
but like to be fair, you can. There's going to be people that hate old Star Trek. There's like I can think of stuff that I don't like about TNG. A lot of stuff I can think about Voyager, right?
Yeah.
And the original series doesn't mean I don't also enjoy it, right? When you're writing scripts, some parts of your cynical side may come out more than others. This felt like a really, really cynical episode.
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
There's like once again the bridge stuff seemed rooted in like Star Trek, well balanced, good, bad, and indifferent, right? And a funny take. Everything else just seemed as parodies of stuff that you've seen before, like not even like smart parodies, like the evil EI in a holodeck, and trying to survive because you're in an unfortunate circumstance, and then the Fletcher, the guest star who is supposed to be smart enough to get into Starfleet and be on a ship, but a complete idiot, and hilarity ensues, right, as he tries to get everyone in trouble. It seemed like a high school that thing felt like a high school type of like B storyline, where like pass.
I have a breaking news at this hour for this episode. There is a connection on this episode to another show that we cover on our other channel, Super Mario Brothers Podcasting, with Survivor, and a former Survivor contestant and winner was the writer of this episode.
Is it Cochran? John Cochran.
It is Cochran. It is John Cochran.
It all makes
wrote
sense.
This episode.
It all makes sense.
Now let's look at it through this lens of the player
goodness.
who won a Survivor. Which season did Cochran win? Does anyone remember?
Fans versus favorites.
Fans versus favorites. Made a couple, like what? Probably like 10 years ago, something like that.
About that, yeah.
I heard he was working on this show, and like when I called into Sister Nino one day, he says, "Yeah, I have a friend who's working on that show." I didn't put it together. It was Cochran.
Friend.
Well, he's friendly with him, and he might know somebody else. I don't know other than Cochran, but
we should get him on the show.
Yeah. Say we really didn't like your episode.
So the dialogue makes sense to me now. Okay, now I get why. Like I'm gonna wear your skin, and the diplomatic immunity thing came out of nowhere. It was like, what the fuck? Why are you making a lethal weapon reference? What does that have to do with anything?
I like that. Honestly,
I like that moment in Lethal Weapon 2, and I think it's a funny thing.
I liked it here.
Explain to me why it was good for that moment. Like, I don't
no reason whatsoever.
Okay.
None. Just want to put it in. But okay, thinking about it that way with under that lens, there's obviously going to be a Bible about the show, and it seems like the Bible about the show regarding the bridge crew seems to be really, really like zeroed in and understands exactly who these characters are. And Schatz is possibly, because they keep going to him, probably one of the writer's room's favorite characters. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of him going forward. The holodeck thing just kind of that makes it even seem worse in some respects. And the Fletcher stuff, that seems like Cochran is projecting, honestly.
Yeah. So now you look at it through that. If you don't watch Survivor and you don't know who Cochran is, a lot of this might be lost on you, but he was like this nerdy redhead guy player, like who was like the meekest guy ever, and somehow like he came back, right, for the fans versus favorite. His first time, I don't think he did great, right, but he was sort of like
in the first time he played in I feel bad that I can't remember it. he was a polarizing character because he was a part of one tribe, and then he was not in well regard, and the other tribe wooed him over when it came to a
Woo.
crucial vote. Woo! And they looked at him as a betrayer and was extremely harsh on him for his decision. And like to the point that it was almost patronizing of how they were treating him. And he didn't win, but he kind of was left in this limbo of like, uh, did he make a good move? And then when he returned, he had a good grasp of the game and kind of controlled it from end to end. And one I felt in a very convincing manner.
Right.
In the
Okay.
returning
Yeah,
season.
and he's well regarded as a as a Survivor player. He was famously one of the only people who said no to coming back to Winners at War, which was the all winners Survivor season. He was like one of the few that turned it down. And if I remember correctly, it's because he was busy doing this. Maybe I had forgotten this, but he was busy writing this episode. Too busy to go on Winners at War. Plus, I don't think he was like, no, I don't think, I don't. Maybe he didn't think he would win or something like that. There may have been other factors involved, but yeah. And then the second time he played quite notoriously, he sort of turned that all around and became much. He had a lot more agency the second time, right?
Yeah.
Like he was able to sort of dictate his fate.
Was a whole different situation. He was playing with players like Philip and Brandon Hance.
Not the Mount Rushmore of Survivor players, perhaps.
He played with Brandon Hance twice.
Francesca. He played with what's the name? I loved her with the missing teeth.
Right.
And then
Dawn.
Dawn. Yeah, Dawn. I felt bad for Dawn.
And he was just kind of there's like this pop culture obsessed nerdy guy, yeah. And so like I think that Lethal Weapon thing, is just him. He's like, I may never get to write a Star Trek episode again. I have to throw everything I love into this episode.
Well, understand the way like those writers room work. He is credited with being the writer of the episode, but he kind of wrote a good portion of it, but not all. Because what ends up happening is you pitch your story to the writers room, and then they brainstorm to fill in the gaps and to rework it. So there's going to be some elements that are going to work really well, or are going to be like the original artists. But there's going to be other influences from the writers' room. So once again, as I stated about the Bible for the show, Bridge Crew, they have down pat. I think they have that cemented. They know that. Oh my gosh, not Bromler.
Boimler?
Richardson. Oh my gosh,
the guest star.
No, not Fletcher. I can remember Fletcher. I can't remember the Badgie subplot.
Rutherford and Devon.
Rutherford and yes, those two. They're gonna do a Sam and Diane with them. Will they? Won't they? For a bit, right? So they already have that idea, and you can see that they're really trying to push the Bromler, pairing, so that they soften up on each other. That
they're really trying to push the Boimler Mariner thing. That those two are a duo. It sometimes is working like that. Like I guess and their foil this week was Fletcher, but he's such I don't know. I guess it does something to establish them as both a little bit responsible and giving them chances to solve problems together, which is what Star Trek is. That characters working together solve problems. So they're doing these things, right? They're giving like that plot line to Devon and Rutherford, and they do this second week in a row. It's fine, and maybe in the long run it's going to pay off because we're going to say, remember that time the holodeck program Badgie was trying to kill them? But in a vacuum, if you look at this episode, you're kind of like, ugh, this isn't it's definitely not one of the funniest. There's some weird things in it. And it just back to Cochran, he is I'm sure he's contributed to other episodes along this way that we wouldn't know, like certain jokes, maybe the ones we haven't liked.
Why you're just pitting it on him?
Yeah, I put it on him because I think that I think that's part of what they do. Also, is like when you have a writer's room. Okay, this is going to be sort of like your episode where you have
or
the basic story,
your characters. So
yeah,
it's
and
like
like
you did a great job with the Bromley story. Can you
right.
have a little bit more?
Did the audience
Cochran,
respond to your story that week? Right.
I
I
would
think
bet
that's a
you-
process.
I would bet you Cochran had a huge influence on the Fletcher character and the Bendy character, the Badgie character. I would imagine because it's his episode, he probably took those
Those two elements, yeah.
two elements.
Like some of the best
Both
Star
of
Trek
which I think
writers
did not work well. I did like the Mariner love of Starfleet declaration. I think they really wanted to hammer that home because I think a lot of questions were like, why is she even in Starfleet? Like,
Yeah, I think that's the big criticism of her character because that's the pilot. But the pilot, like since the pilot, it's been walking that back. I feel like, and I'm like, well, why did you put that in the pilot then? Exactly, I don't understand because like she had such like this disdain for establishment, for the Starfleet, for her parents, and like, but she says, no, I only object to stupid rules that get in my way from doing my job or from having fun. Like I don't put anyone in danger, so like you don't have to you're sort of having to rebuild this character, but you kind of put her in a tough spot from the beginning unnecessarily. In that way, like we said that she isn't like someone had compared her to Michael Burnham and we're like, well, she's nothing like Michael Burnham, but in that way she is like Michael Burnham in the sense that you've sort of set her behind the 8 ball from the beginning, made her sort of this underdog or sort of a character that the audience might have problems rooting for, and then you get us to slowly like them. I don't even know if you need to do that in a Star Trek show. I'm like, we should almost, the whole spirit of Star Trek is we should try to embrace these characters almost right away. You know,
I think they just went a little bit too hard on it. Like if they made it into her being like a troublemaker maverick versus like this anarchist that they had in the first episode where she's like, F the rules, I'm doing my way, kind of like, it just seemed like such an extreme. And yes, they have been like scaling it back. Like she's like, she'll play hooky, but she wouldn't try to destroy the ship. And she'll actively go out of her way to make sure that things are done right.
Yes. Right. That she's going to do the right thing. She has a sense of responsibility and making, and not being negligent. Right. And she cares about friends and what they're doing. Like, and she tries to help Fletcher, until she figures out that he's,
unhelpable.
Yeah. He's been completely a complete scumbag.
He's a scumbag.
Did you know, Jaemeel, the guy that voices Shax, Fred Tetashori? Did you know that he does Soldier 76 in Overwatch? It's the same guy.
Confirmed.
You knew that?
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, get off my lawn.
He's still so great. Like there's a lot of good things going on. We hadn't mentioned also the cat doctor. She was in the whole scene tonight where she gets the nachos. Yeah, like it wasn't that funny to me. Like I just don't think that. I think because again, Fletcher is the one she's playing off of a little bit, and she's been funnier. But like we were talking about how funny Shax was, but she was sort of down for me this week in some of the delivery.
Do you know how hard it is to get nacho cheese out of fur with a sonic shower?
I don't know. Like it can't be that hard.
Pretty hard.
Yeah,
pretty hard.
Oh no! Apparently, she just needed some water. And I think it was all good.
So we're halfway through this season, and like Dave, how do you feel about this show?
I'm still feeling good about this show, but I think that sometimes they go in the wrong direction. I don't necessarily want them to. I'd rather them keep this like a lighthearted, slightly satirical version of Star Trek that is still rooted in what the spirit of Star Trek is. And so when they do kind of these things, like certain things in the show, like him hooking his brain up and all these things, like I don't think that they're the right thing. I don't think you need to do those things. You have to. To me, I want to connect to Jeff. Jeff's like, no, just make it completely like The Simpsons of of Star Trek, and I think that would be fine too. But you have to you to try to like straddle the line is not always going to work.
I don't think they are trying to straddle the line. I think they're very. I mean, they're lying to us if they think this is canon. Because to me, this show is exactly what you just said, Dave. It's the Simpsons of Star Trek. It's the satirical look at Star Trek, which is fine. If that's what you say it is, don't lie to the DR.
The line confessional.
More and more, I think this show will be referenced in other shows, other canon Star Trek shows, but it's going to be like the real version of these characters will be referenced and not anything that happens on this show. So there might be a Bromler that exists and might be mentioned, as the second most important, person.
Well, we've been talking about the fact for a couple of weeks here that they are definitely going to because everybody who is voicing their characters more or less physically resembles their animated character, right? With some exceptions, and I think that you're almost certainly going to see a meta episode where we're going to see these characters as real life versions instead of the animated versions somewhere down. Maybe not this season, but at some point it's going to happen, and they'll be able to do it in a way that the Simpsons can't because the Simpsons don't have that. You have like people playing multiple different characters within the Simpsons. Like I think they did that one. It wasn't the one opening of the Simpsons where they were like the live action Homer and all the people in Springfield. Yeah. I think they did that just once with a whole bunch of different actors they hired, but that I think that is coming. I don't know. Like,
I am surprised that this show doesn't do that and have like Fred Tatasciore do multiple characters because he can. He's a voice actor. There's certain people that definitely could do it. Like the Simpsons did, like I'm surprised like they bring in the J.G. Hertzler or they bring in Paul Scheer or they bring in whoever else to kind of like fill in the roles. I'm surprised they do that.
You know why? I know definitely why, because I think a lot of these people aren't getting paid their usual rate. Before, when you had Next Gen, less so in Deep Space Nine, and even occasionally more in Voyager, you had the guest stars from Hollywood that would come by and be in these episodes. And since like Enterprise, you never really saw that. You don't really see that in Discovery. People aren't coming up to Toronto to just guest star on Star Trek. Now you have the opportunity from your own home to voice act. So all these people in Hollywood who are not like A-stars, A-listers, but like, the Paul Scheers and stuff, is like, I can finally be involved in a Star Trek show. I don't necessarily want to be multiple actors or characters, but I'll be one, right? And then say that I have my Star Trek legacy. I think that's primarily the reason. You'll take a lower pay to be on a 10-episode animated show.
You're Jerry O'Connell, Stamos, Romaine.
Well, Jerry O'Connell's like, well, I can take a break in my was it CTV original television show Carter?
No, which it's all about My Secret Identity.
Well, his current show is called Carter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or
where
Sliders.
It's like Castle. It's like Castle, but not Castle.
The legacy of Jerry O'Connell, from My Secret Identity to Sliders to, well, now Carter and this. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've been watching him his whole life. Oh, you Stand By Me as well. And like, yeah, could you see him playing like a live action Jack Ransom? I don't know. Like, I got to think that that's going to be a possibility. And I get what you're saying. Like more guest stars. There were a ton of guest stars, like the Jason Alexanders and the they would get who's that guy from LA Law? Corbin Burnson would show up on an episode or whatever back at a certain point, right? It was kind of cool to be a guest star on Star Trek
on the Paramount Studio lot.
And they thought, like, what if we do an animated show? People love doing voices cameos on The Simpsons, right? And why not sort of make that part of our model?
Yeah, why not? Right, and that's fine. Like if that's what the show is, and it can work in some ways, and some of the jokes will land. So tonight wasn't the best, but there were some jokes that I thought were really funny. And
we've had a guest star in every episode, right?
I think
there's always been additional characters. It isn't just the main cast. Even like the antagonist will show up and be like a guest star. Yeah.
Right.
There's no real bottle episodes where it's just the same characters.
Yeah, like that, like them crashed on a planet or something along those lines. And I think that they probably will do that at some point.
The Tendi character, guys, is not working. She's got nothing. Every episode, Rutherford is leading that whole
duo?
relationship.
Yeah.
That duo, yeah, like the Tendi character kind of sucks. I mean, and it's always
manic
they're always
pixie
together.
dream girl. She's a manic pixie dream girl.
I know that, but like
Meanie?
they could write something else for her. It's not,
I already told you guys what I think her storyline will be, which is she either does not have the ability as an Orion to seduce men, or she purposely is like dumbing that down because she wants people to like her. That's why she's like desperate for acknowledgement, right? And then something happens. Let's say what they would use for Vulcans, they're going to use it for Orions, where she can't control herself, and like everyone's liking her for her pheromones. And then we later find out that Rutherford actually likes her for her. And that's the episode that kind of solidifies their relationship. She finally trusts him, and they start dating. Credits.
Yeah, you probably bang on the money there. Like the fact that he has this Vulcan implant or whatever that means that I don't know exactly what it means. Sometimes he's controlled by logic. If his emotions get too powerful. He's also married to his job, like Geordie LaForge sort of style. And doesn't necessarily. Well, Geordie was more interested in women than this guy, because he was he wasn't into the Trill lady he was dating in the second episode, I think.
Wasn't the first episode with the zombies?
Yeah, maybe it's the first episode. So anyways, yeah, he was like sort of dating the Trill helmsman or ops officer, and he was like, no, I just love being an engineer, and that's really funny. But yeah, like I think you're right, Jeff, that she's just been his sidekick. And I think that the fact that it's been episode after episode, it's Boimler and Mariner, and Devana and Rutherford, and then somehow they circle in with the other with the bridge officers, sort of in the orbit of the story. But you got to mix this up more. You got to put Devana and Mariner together, or you got Rutherford and Boimler and all kinds of combinations. You got 4 people there. Right, like this isn't hard. Like they've been like look at a show like Seinfeld. They know what to do with. You got 4 characters, and you got to mix and match them sometimes and put them in wacky situations.
Is Shat's going to be Kramer?
No, Shax I think is more like a background. Like he's like a recurring character, not a Newman, but something Newman adjacent perhaps. Like
he's kind of like Putty.
Yeah, he's like Putty, or he's like Putty. Okay, that's a good analogy for him. He come in with the funny jokes, but not a central character, but someone they have to deal with.
Yeah, but like that's the thing with like, you're right, like David. We're like this is the 6th episode. Are we supposed to believe that these 4 people are friends, or is it just like 2 pairs? And like I don't really see the friendship between the 4 of them. It's more like Beckett and Boimler, like you said, and Devana and Rutherford. It's just like I don't get why not. I thought they were going to do it in this episode, and I guess I was sorely mistaken. Will they do it next episode? I don't think so. Like I don't think they're ever going to do it. Like it seems like there's been 6 episodes. They haven't really done it.
Yeah.
I think it's a legitimate criticism of what they're doing right now, because she's not working for me as well, because her thing seems to be like, I'm super enthusiastic. But
that's not a thing.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a thing. Like Rutherford has a very specific thing, and Mariner is more appealing than Devana right now, because she's way more fleshed out in terms of who she is and what I can expect out of her and what I think she sort of brings to this whole thing. And with Devana, I'm enthusiastic. Wow. Okay. And she's always trying to make people feel better.
Yeah.
But how are you like if you're this is a comedy show, right? So I don't understand how she's playing into the comedy aspects.
Yeah,
of it.
how we playing off of that type of attitude, at the same time, how are we learning more about the character?
Yeah, and there's been very little. Like we got a little bit in an earlier episode where she's like, "I'm back on Orion," and I'm like, "Okay, you're the first Orion like character, really, like main character in a Star Trek show." So, but that's a species we know a little bit about, but not a ton about. You got a lot of like room to explore that. What's Orion culture like?
Yeah.
How do you play into that? Like, that's where
How
I
does
think
Ryan's date?
yeah. How do you date a half Vulcan computer man who's obsessed with diagnostics and Jeffrey's tubes?
What happens when Rutherford has the Ponfar?
he has the computer Ponfar.
Yeah, computer
That was
Ponfar.
funny. Like, there's a funny concept. Yeah, this is like I don't. Yeah, he's like maybe he's got the porn going or something. He's tied in on that. He's just
There's
downloading amounts of porn.
His porn is like what Star Trek the motion picture and those long shots of the Enterprise. He's like, oh yeah.
yeah, that's when it's funny when he's like, "Wow, the warp core! Wow,
Look at those nurse cells! Oh.
Look at that!" That's when because he's so or he's like, or when he's just super like into whatever he's doing. But yeah, but that's his thing, right? And Devanna's is just following him around. So they got to work on that.
When they play on expectations, I find that humorous. And what are her expectations? They haven't really done anything with her.
No, there should be more of her and the cat doctor, Ta'ana.
Yeah.
Right. But she's just worried about getting the nacho cheese out of her.
I'd like to see a more, like a doctor-centric episode, a Shaq-centric episode. They're not doing that on this show, though. They're just not, because everything has to be about Beckett and Boimler for the most part. Rutherford gets the B story every time with Tendi piling around. So, but I think they could have way more fun with this show if they didn't. I really feel like they shouldn't have called it Lower Decks, or they shouldn't have had to have focused it on those 4 people.
Just
because I think they have a
ship.
Yeah, just based on the ship, just call it like Star Trek Cerritos or whatever. That would have been better to me, because then they could have done a captain centric episode. The Shacks, the Ransom. But they seem like they're almost like super characters in the minds of a Beckett and Boimler. Like they're eccentric, even like they almost don't seem like real, like in a lot of ways, like the captain, and like they seem like they're removed in a lot of ways to the narrative of the story, and which is odd, because I don't really know how to follow the narration of the story every time, because a lot of they're acting like, sometimes like the captain tonight was acting very much like what Starfleet, making fun of it, where it's like, oh no, we have to do this non-violently, even though even in real Star Trek, I think a Star Trek captain would have fired back, considering what was going on. And then you have Shax, saying, let's target the warp core, let's blow it, which they would never probably do that. They would probably try to actually
not quite that bold, right? Like Worf would say, like, recommend firing phasers, and Picard would be like, no,
request denied.
Request denied, but he wouldn't say let's kill them.
No, he would say they would probably try to target the engines or their weapons. That's what will probably happen in a real Star Trek episode. So they're doing things that are like that doesn't fly. That doesn't seem like quite right.
Even Shax's log tonight, where he goes, their claim on salvage Starfleet cargo is ludicrous. Thus far, my recommendation of full assault has been ignored in favor of a more diplomatic approach. It's funny, but it's exaggerated, right? I think that's what we were kind of saying at the beginning. Like, how far they push this exaggeration sometimes, I think, is like the further they push it, the less I'm into it. When that guy ascended, and I was like, that's. Pull it back. You can make this funny and still make it a Star Trek show.
And with the computer warp core thing or whatever, the computer core thing tonight that turned into like this other like this
virus thing. I don't know what it was.
Thing that turned into they ended up destroying the other ship, and then at the same time they're cutting back to the Bendy, the big star guy, the Delta looking guy, voiced by Jack McBrayer. So like everything about what's going on is just like that's not realistic, like of what Star Trek is, so like. I find it funny a lot of the times, but I'm like, come on, like what's going on here?
Plus both of them happening at the same time and not being connected just seemed really off.
Yes, it did, and it seemed like they wrote the same story twice. With the Badgie storyline and then the computer core thing. It's like I don't know. Like,
they had too many ideas in one episode too. I think, right?
Think so.
For this to really work, but I don't think a whole Badgie episode would have been funnier. I think it probably would have been even cringier a little bit.
Or they could have had it like it involved in the infection of the other, like it was combined with the other guy's warp core or something, or vice versa. Somehow just combine the two, where it's like this one idea kind of split into two different scenarios that impacted both.
Yeah, that's what Seinfeld used to do very, very well. They would somehow combine the George and Elaine storyline with the Jerry Kramer storyline, and you wouldn't even know how they did it, but they ended up doing it.
They would do it brilliantly. They did it over and over again. There must be like just sort of this was 30 years ago they were writing episodes like this. There must be some kind of approach to writing episodes and interconnecting your characters in that format. They did it for all those years. I know it was maybe they made it look too easy, but Friends did it too. Like you can do this.
It's a sitcom trope.
It's a sitcom trope. This it has the sitcom format largely, and I think there's just like I don't know, like I just make a few different choices in some cases. That's all. That's that's sort of high level. Like I don't want to gripe and complain too much, but I also just know that I think that there's more potential if they go in this direction. I think that's okay, because overall, halfway through this season, even though this episode I think I'm a bit down on, and I'm not feeling every character. Like if would I feel better if I was watching Star Trek: The Next Generation first season for the first time? I think I would feel worse, just in terms of how I felt about the show after 6 episodes of TNG, just like especially the Picard and Wesley stuff, and some of that was still the Tasha Yar days. Not that I'm criticizing Tasha Yar, but that was before they had kind of worked out what the show was, and and by the 3rd season of Next Gen, everybody's kind of where they need to be, and they have like sort of their core 7 characters really cemented in, and that carries them through the rest. So it's not like I feel like this is salvageable. I feel like nothing they've done so far is gone too far, but they push these limits sometimes. I'm like, you don't need to do that to make this funny. That's not what your big punchline of the episode needs to be to make it good.
This is an episode that people are like, you could skip that episode. You don't need to watch it.
Yeah, I think you could say this is the one you could probably skip. Even if it were like, hey, I'm going to watch the show now. I'm like, if you're looking for just the best episodes of the season,
this ain't it.
And I think while we, I don't want to, we should just get into the ratings here. How are we going to quantify this exactly? So this episode, Terminal Provocations. Jeff, you want to go first?
5.
5. So better than the pilot?
Yeah, the pilot sucks.
I'm going to go. I think this is like a 6 for me.
Oof.
So I've been on a downward trend for the last 3 weeks. But I'm not like in the dumps. Jaemeel.
5. This is worse than the pilot for me.
Worse than the pilot for you. Okay, so that averages it out at 5.3. Yep. So that is the weakest episode so far. Factoring in our ratings, we were mixed on the pilot. We ended up coming out I was pretty high on it, actually, so that helped bring it up to a 6.1. Jeff was pretty low. Jaemeel was in the middle, so we we had really two great episodes in Envoys and Temple Edict in episode 2 and 3 respectively. And then, Moist Vessel, we were like pretty good on, but we weren't like, it could be better. And then last week, Jaemeel, you were a little bit higher last week. You liked
I was a little bit higher on it.
Yeah. But this I think we're kind of sort of all in the same place. So did I get all? Yeah, it was 2 5s and a 6. Yeah. And
I would have had it higher, but I would have had it higher. That pantsing stuff, I still did not like. I think back to it, and that just stands out as a scene that just seemed completely unnecessary.
In Moist Vessel? Is that the one?
No,
Cupid.
Yeah, I didn't like the pantsing.
Do you want to go down to 7.4? Do you want to take another?
No. That's the reason why.
You'll stick by your rating.
Yeah, I'll stick by my rating.
Okay. So next week we're doing Much Ado About Boimler, which is going to have John Delancey as Q back in this show, and I think that was a big headline. Tuesday was Star Trek Day, and I don't know if they announced it Tuesday or yesterday, but it's come out. And I think that this is where you have to nail it, right? Like, you're bringing in John Delancey. You've had 7 episodes, or 6 episodes rather, and to sort of get warmed up, know your characters at least a bit. Here's your big guest star. You better have good writing. You better have bring your best performances.
You have an amazing opportunity to explain what the hell this universe is with Q.
Yeah.
Do you really want them to waste Q on explaining the universe?
I wouldn't hurt.
Really? I don't know.
I don't know if do I want it explicitly explained, just so you and I can start arguing about it and how canon this is or isn't, because I'm still can't figure it out. I would rather have a resolution to that in terms of but does it have to be next week? No.
To me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know. It matters. So because the way that Memory Alpha, the Star Trek wiki is treating this, they're treating it as canon. So am I.
So that's why I love bringing it up, Jaemeel, because it drives Dave nuts. Because
you just twist that knife.
It says here, if I click on Beckett Mariner was a human Starfleet officer who lived in the 2380s, not in some other dimension. In the universe. So
he needs it to fit in the box of the Star Trek universe, and this show is doing everything it can to shit on the Star Trek universe as far as the mechanics of the Star Trek universe in a lot of ways.
The morality of the human race.
Yeah, the morality of Starfleet and how Starfleet works and all those kind of things. So it's I don't know. It's so contradictory to me.
There you go. Okay. Jaemeel, what do you hope out of this Q episode?
I kind of didn't. When you said it was like a Boimler, the title thing, I'm like, can it just be about Q and just Q messing with people on the ship? All right, I want Q and Sax. I want Q and Sax scenes.
It might be Q and Boimler majority of the episode. That'd be my guess.
This is going to be the first appearance of John Delancey Q in a Star Trek episode since Voyager's 7th season. I think they did the one with his son, who was playing his son, like the John Delancey's son played the Q's son in that episode. And this is the first time he's going to be back. Now, Q's dynamic with Next Gen pretty well established. It was about Picard, but he sort of had a dynamic with all the other main cast in some way, but it was very much about him and Picard primarily. And in Voyager, he had this similar thing with with Janeway. He called her Kathy, and they were going to get married at that one point. And they had those, but their dynamic was a bit different. They were a bit more friends with Q, I'd say, on Voyager, in a lot of ways. And I like his one appearance on Deep Space Nine where Cisco punches him. I'm not Picard. Not much to go on there, but I don't know who is. Okay, so is it going to be Boimler? Is his main guy on the Cerritos going to be Boimler?
That's what I think.
Is that what we? I guess. Who else is it going to be? I guess it's.
I don't want to see Q and Beckett. I don't know.
I think he's going to disregard her, and it's going to piss her off. It's going to frustrate her so much. He's like, we're kindred spirits. I'm like your new Vash.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I can see that. Like, because Q likes to pick on people like Boimler, like Picard, like Janeway.
He likes the people he can get a rise out of, like Worf.
Yes.
Actually, all the TNG cast, they all were like, "We don't have time for your shit, Q." And
when O'Brien sees him in Deep Space Nine is great.
Yeah, Brian's like, "Not you, fucking guy." All right, and then but Voyager was more like was sort of annoyed with him, but they were also like, "We're just happy you're on our show," right? So they were just thrilled, right? And they had some good episodes.
It's like a holodeck episode.
Yeah.
Kinda, yeah. It's kind of like a crazy adventure because Q is an omnipotent being that can do anything, go anywhere, whatever. So there's so much potential, but they've sort of used a lot of that already. Like they kind of do this wacky out there stuff, like that Ascension thing. Still bugs me. I don't know, was it because he was meditating? I don't understand what was going on with this whole thing. The Ascension. Why? I don't know. No one has answers for me. What else is there? Is there anything else to ask? Really, like speculate on what else? Like we got 4 more episodes. I guess the only thing in terms of going into next week, why are they doing this at the 7th episode, not like the finale of the season?
Enough time for Star Trek Day to get ratings up, I guess.
Maybe. Well, yeah, maybe just why? But why bring John Delancey in sort of halfway through?
You don't want to do it at the beginning.
Why would you do it
still establishing characters, and you'll realize how good of a character he is in comparison to the other ones. My question to you, Dave, is the last episode of this season going to be to be continued?
I give it a very high chance. I think that because TNG almost every season finale was a to be continued and after season 3, right?
I think
so.
You have Best of Both Worlds, fire, right? And then
and they had Descent, and they got Times Arrow, and they have there's one more I'm forgetting, but that's what they just did, and Deep Space Nine did it a whole bunch of times. Voyager certainly did it a few times. Enterprise. So why wouldn't they make fun of that? But they have to find a way to make that funny. I don't know how they're going to do that if they're even going to try. But if you're going to do a to be continued, you should try. I think
maybe.
Okay, well, I think that covers it then. We're coming up in an hour, and Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, Episode 6, Turnover Provocations has ended. We've broken it all down. I'm Dave Mader. Join us here on Live Long and Podcast. Our next project is going to be Star Trek Radio Theater, coming to you this Saturday night as we're reenacting an episode from Star Trek Voyager's 7th season, Inside Man, which will feature Dr. Reginald Barclay, who I will be playing. Sorry, not Dr. Lieutenant Reginald Barclay, as well as the holographic version of him in that episode. We got Ashley Millard as Deanna Troy, Kevin Millard as also as the narrator. We have Kevin Millard as the Doctor, Leosa, and Yeji, one of the Ferengis. We got Jessica Chan as Captain Catherine Janeway. We have also as Admiral Owen Paris, and one of the schoolgirls who is learning about the Delta Quadrant races. Jeff is going to be playing Tom Paris, Neelix, 7 of 9, and Damon Nunk. So check that out. And then we have Michael Chan as Commander Pete Harkins, Lieutenant B'Elanna Torres, Commander Chakotay, and as a Green Waiter. And we also have my wife Jane playing Ensign Harry Kim, Tuvok, Gigis, and the other schoolgirl. So, and as the voice of the computer. So this is you can see there's a lot of characters going on. This is kind of a TNG crossover with Voyager from their 7th season. And there's a lot. I think we actually have a ton of fun with this story. I'm looking forward to it. So check that out. And we do Deep Space Nine on Tuesday nights, and we do original series rewatches on Wednesday nights, as well as this. So check all that out if you love Star Trek, which we hope you do. And our other channel, Super Mader Brothers Podcasting, where we cover Big Brother 3 times a week, Sunday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Trivial Debates, our monthly debate show where we argue about movies, TV, music, sports, and more. So anyway, that's all we got. Subscribe.